This is Meena here, extending a very warm welcome to my channel Grow Joyfully. In a series of videos, I am explaining how I started doing vermicomposting at home in urban context. I hope you watched the first video in which I gave an introduction to worm composting, and I also discussed the features required for a worm bin. In this video, the second in the series, I will explain what bedding is, how to prepare it. Now we'll understand the term, the worm bedding. The forest floor is a natural habitat of worms, and we are trying to mimic this at home inside the worm bin using the bedding. The bedding is a medium in which the worms live and perform all their activities. It is also a source of food for the worms. The worms eat the bedding slowly. Three main characteristics are very critical. One is the bedding should be able to absorb a lot of water and it should be able to retain it. The reason is worms breathe through their skins, and hence they also require a very moist environment in which they live. If a worm skin dries out, it dies because it breathes through the skins. Second is it should be a fluffy environment. We call it as good bulking potential. If the bedding material is too dense or too compact, then the flow of air is reduced or eliminated inside the bin. Worms require oxygen to live just as we do. So the overall fluffiness of the material matters a lot. The material comprising the bedding should also be low in protein or nitrogen and high in carbon. The bedding should never get heated up, and that can happen if you put a lot of nitrogen rich material. Nitrogen rich material can create a very inhospitable environment leading to fatality of the worms. I present a list of choices for bedding here, and you may choose what is available easily at your end. I use the first three choices present here extensively: shredded corrugated cardboard, aged cow dung, or Ganajiva Mrida. This is something that I prepare at home using cow dung. I also use a lot of decomposed or dried leaves. Sometimes I do get access to sugarcane waste. Worms are sweet lovers, so they love it. And if you get access to straw, coconut coir, chemical-free sawdust, those are also good bedding material. Shredded newspaper is another option that you can look into, easily available all the time. There are some more choices. In India, some people use cocoa peat as bedding. Some people who do aerobic composting or bokashi composting, they also use a fully done compost that contains a lot of beneficial bacteria and fungi. But I don't use, because I reserve this homemade compost for my plants only. And worms are also coffee lovers, so to say. So you can add coffee grounds in moderation. A handful in our tub would do. Next, we need to understand the importance of grit. Worms do not have teeth, so they simply swallow the food. So where is grinding going to happen? Much like the birds, which have an organ called gizzard, worms also have a gizzard. And the gizzard has got a lot of very strong muscles, and that's where grinding happens, churning and mixing of the food happens. You can visualize the gizzard to be like a grinder or a mixer that we have in our kitchen. So we require some kind of a grit like eggshell powder, soil, sand particles. They grind against the food, tearing it into smaller and smaller portions. So grit, a small amount is enough for our tub, maybe a handful. Let me show you how I prepare the corrugated cardboard to be added to my bin. This is a very big carton that I got from a neighborhood site where a house is being constructed. During online purchases also you get a lot of cardboard cartons. While we require only the corrugated portion, there's a lot of unwanted stuff. We may have glossy paper or coating which is glued on the cardboard, staplers pinned on them, plastic labels which are stuck on them, cellophane or plastic wrappings around. When the cardboard is so thick, It is first difficult to shred, and it's also very difficult to remove the unwanted portion. Try doing it when it is dry, you may land up even in shoulder pain. So the easiest way is, you can see what I'm doing here, cut them into large pieces, soak them in water for a few hours. In fact, I do it the previous day evening if I want to prepare the bedding the next day morning. So now you can see it is easy to shred, it's easy to remove the unwanted stuff. Please ensure that you squeeze out the water completely from the cardboard shreddings before you add them to the bin. The next item that I put is really my favorite, dry leaves, which are available in plenty. There are a lot of twigs also. I leave them as they are because they provide the necessary aeration within the bin. You may also use the decomposing leaves, which are dark black in color. I like leaves because they are zero cost and they also mimic the natural habitat which is seen in the forest floor, enjoyed by the worms thoroughly. Soak them in water for a few hours and then remove the excess water completely using a sieve and then add them to the bin. You may shred them into smaller pieces either before or after soaking. The third item that I am adding is a favorite for the earthworms, especially the Indian varieties. You may use dried cow dung. Here I am using Ganajivamrita, which is made using cow dung and cow urine. These are available in the form of cakes. You may soak them in water for a few hours, remove them, break them into smaller pieces and add them to the bin. There is nothing like one that is a single best bedding material that you can use. To give an example, straw or hay provide the bulk and the volume, but they don't retain water, they don't help with moisture maintenance. Similarly, when you put dry or decaying leaves, they are rich in carbon and microorganisms, but they are also prone to matting if they are just piled up as such. So the key to maintaining a very healthy worm bin is to choose a variety of material, at least 3 choices from the list that I had discussed earlier, and mix all of them thoroughly after ensuring that every material has been soaked or moistened. The entire bed must be moist and damp, but not dripping wet, not soggy. I also add some coffee grounds. They come under the category of greens, but since I had in small amount, I'm adding it right up front to the bedding material. And for grit, I'm adding a handful of soil. Once you prepare the bedding, you may cover it with a moist piece of cloth and leave it for a week before you introduce the worms. This will help in a good microbial colony getting formed. We have put organic matter there, so the beneficial aerobic bacteria will start feeding on it, and they in turn become the primary food source for the worms. And as a rule, and one not to be broken, nothing inorganic belongs to the bedding material. That is, you should not put any plastic, glass, metal, polymers, etc. Worm bedding is one of the most important elements in vermicomposting. It's our responsibility to create a comfortable, cozy bedding. Worms enjoy such a bedding very thoroughly and they'll go about their activities merrily. Some tips here: if you are using cattle manure, please ensure that you use aged manure and do not add fresh manure at all into the bin. It may heat up the bin. It may also turn the material acidic, which is not acceptable to the worms. If you are using newspaper shreddings, ensure that you remove the glossy colored portion in the newspapers first. Always use chemical-free sawdust that you get from a sawmill. If you are using compost from aerobic composting or bokashi, then ensure that it's fully done, because partially done compost can again heat up the bin. Ensure that the bedding material is free of any sharp or abrasive things, because they can harm the worm's sensitive skin. Things like thorns, prickles, etc. Please avoid. They also break down very slowly and they could be a long-term source of danger for the worms. Once we are ready with the bedding, it's time to introduce the worms. In my next video, I will talk about the different species of worms and how to introduce them into the bin. Thank you for watching my video. Have a great day.